All right, today we're diving deep into the psychological puzzle box that is Shudder Island. Now, on the surface, this movie looks like a straightforward detective story. But underneath all that atmosphere and mystery, it's really the tragic story of a mind so completely shattered by guilt that it builds a whole new reality from scratch. So let's piece together the clues, not just to figure out what happened, but why it had to happen.
You know, the craziest thing about this film, the key to unlocking the whole mystery isn't some dramatic confession or a big action scene. Nope. It all comes down to this: a quiet, fleeting glance between two men that you could easily miss. That single, silent moment changes everything, and it turns what you thought was a thriller into an almost unbearable tragedy. So how on earth did we get here?
Okay, so the film kicks off with a classic detective movie setup. We meet U.S. Marshal Teddy Daniels. He's heading to this super remote place, the Ashcliff Hospital for the Criminally Insane, which is on, you guessed it, Shudder Island. And his mission seems simple enough: find out how a patient managed to just vanish from a locked room.
But right from the jump, you can just feel that something is seriously wrong. There's this thick fog of dread hanging over everything. The guards are tense, the doctors are being weirdly secretive. The whole island just feels less like a hospital and more like a trap. We think we're just watching a detective do his job, but the truth is, it's something way more disturbing.
And as Teddy starts to dig for clues, the case doesn't just start to unravel, he does. That professional wall that's supposed to separate the detective from the case, it just completely crumbles away. The investigation itself basically becomes a trigger for his own trauma. See, Teddy's a World War II veteran, and the grim vibe of this island starts dredging up all these awful memories from the war. And on top of that, he's having these incredibly vivid hallucinations of his wife who's dead. Pretty soon, all that pain and memory just starts bleeding into the case, twisting everything he thinks he sees and hears.
And here's what's so brilliant about the film's design. Every clue he finds, you'd think it would get him closer to solving the mystery, right? Nope. Instead, every new piece of information just pulls him and us deeper and deeper down this dark psychological rabbit hole. He is absolutely convinced he's investigating a crime, when in reality, he's just lost in the most terrifying corners of his own mind.
And this is where we get to the absolute heart of it all, the big twist. The investigation, it isn't real. And U.S. Marshal Teddy Daniels, he isn't real either. They're both just characters in an elaborate work of fiction, a story one man created to hide from a truth that is just too horrible to live with.
So let's look at the two sides of this shattered mind. On one side, you've got Teddy Daniels. He's the hero, the tough, morally righteous lawman on a noble quest. That's the story he tells himself. But the reality? That's Andrew Laeddis. He's not a marshal. He's the hospital's 67th patient, and he's not investigating a crime, he's repressing one, completely drowning in his own guilt.
So, what could possibly cause a person's mind to just break so completely? Well, it's this catastrophic chain of events. Andrew came home from the war a deeply broken man, and he was so lost in his own trauma, he just didn't see how badly his wife was suffering from her own mental illness. That neglect led to an unthinkable tragedy, and his reaction to it was so violent and devastating that his mind did the only thing it could to survive. It didn't just bury the memory, it shattered itself and built a new person, Teddy Daniels, to take his place.
Now, just when you think you have it all figured out, the movie completely flips the script again. Because what we've been watching isn't just a man lost in his own head. Oh no, it's actually a highly orchestrated, incredibly risky form of therapy. It turns out Dr. Cawley, the head psychiatrist, he set this whole thing up. He created this massive stage, allowing Andrew to fully live out his Teddy Daniels fantasy. The entire staff, the guards, everyone, they're all actors in this play. And the hope, the radical idea, was that if they let the delusion run all the way to its conclusion, maybe, just maybe, reality would come crashing in and force Andrew to finally confront the truth.
And you have to understand, the stakes could not have been higher. The hospital's board was done. They wanted to lobotomize Andrew. So Dr. Cawley, the guy who seems like the villain for most of the movie, is actually the most compassionate man on the island. He put his entire career on the line for this one last-ditch effort, this one final chance to bring Andrew back.
And the amazing thing is, it works. For a brief moment, Andrew is back. He accepts the truth of what he's done. But what happens next is easily the most heartbreaking and the most profound part of the entire film. So the next morning, Andrew is sitting with his doctor, and he calls him Chuck, the name of his fictional partner.
He starts talking about getting off the rock. And just like that, it looks like it all failed. The experiment's over. You can just see the defeat on Dr. Cowley's face. It's done. But then, as they're about to take him away, Andrew turns to his doctor and he asks that one haunting question. Which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man? And that single line changes everything. Because that's not something a delusional man would ask. That's the question of a man who is completely sane and staring at an impossible choice. So what are we actually seeing? Is he really Teddy Daniels again, completely lost in the fantasy? Or is this Andrew Laeddis, pretending to be Teddy, because the reality of his own life is just too monstrous for anyone to live with?
And that fleeting glance we talked about at the very beginning, that's the answer. He looks at his doctor for just a split second, and in that look, there's a silent acknowledgement. And then he gets up and lets them take him away. He isn't relapsing, he is choosing. He has decided that it is better to die as a good man, to have his mind completely erased, than to live as a monster with the full crushing weight of what he's done.
Look, Andrew's situation is obviously an extreme one, but it taps into a deeply human truth about how all of us cope with pain and how we protect our own idea of who we are. It's really all about the stories we tell ourselves to get by.
And that's really the big message of this film. Our identity isn't some fixed thing. It's a story. It's the narrative that we weave together from our memories, our beliefs, our experiences. And when the truth of that story becomes too painful to bear, the mind will go to unbelievable lengths to write a new one, all in the name of self-preservation.
And let's be honest, we all do this, just on a much, much smaller scale. We edit our memories to take the sting out. We reframe past events to make ourselves look a little bit better. We all want to be the misunderstood hero of our own story. It's a basic psychological defense mechanism. Andrew Laeddis just takes that same human impulse and follows it to its most absolute tragic and heartbreaking end.
And all of that leaves us with this one final, lingering thought. Shudder Island isn't really about one man's delusion. In a way, it's a mirror. It forces us to take a hard look at the stories we build to make sense of our own lives, our own pain, and our own guilt. So the question to take away from all this is, what story are you telling yourself?